Name, image, and likeness. It's a conversation that's been going on and on and on, and it's continuing to grow now as we're getting closer to the point in collegiate sports where athletes can monetize off their name, image, and likeness. But some of them are wondering, how do I even do that? Right now, we all wanted it, but now we need to know, how do we do that? Today's guest is perfect for that question because he's built a platform that's going to help you with exactly that. I promise you guys, you do not want to miss this episode of the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. My name is Shane Larson, host of the show. It's been 4.5 years almost now that we've been doing this, established 2017 in January, and the show continues to grow thanks in large part to all of you and thanks in large part to our sponsor of the podcast, 208 Printing. That's the title sponsor of the podcast. Later on, you're going to hear from some of our presenting sponsors for the show from Sportsepreneur. But 208 Printing is the title sponsor of the podcast. Make sure to go to madeby208.com. Get your merch taken care of over there. They'll get your swag, anything that you need, all your printing needs done. They'll help you be a walking billboard if you want to represent your brand, your team, whatever it may be. Hats, shirts, whatever. Anything you need printed, they'll get you taken care of. Guys, listen, if you haven't done so already, it would be awesome if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Just recently, we charted again in the top 250 in the United States of America. We're in the top 20 in Spain. We're in the top 250 in the U.S., and we're continuing to build and build and build, and it's due in large part to all of you and the reviews that you're leaving me on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't done so already, please leave me a review, and we'll get this thing rolling. As you guys know, we're here every week with an amazing guest, somebody in the sports world that has something to share with us of immense value, and today is no different. We've got an amazing interview coming your way. This is the founder and CEO of URepz, which we will find out more about today. His name is Brett Harrell. And Brett, we're just excited to have you, man. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Shane, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, brother. We're going to talk about URepz here in just a second. It's a huge topic that I think a lot of the younger athletes really, really need to hone in on. So if you're a younger athlete right now and you're listening to this, you're a little bit distracted because you might be doing something else, stop what you're doing and pay attention to this, or pause this until you're done doing what you're doing and come back and listen to it, because I want you guys to focus in for real. Brett, we're going to get to know you more a little bit before the URepz thing started, to get a little bit of a foundation of who you are, athletic background, and so forth. So let's rewind the clock a little bit and let's find out about Brett Harrell and your sports background. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you, Shane. Yeah, a soccer player, played multiple sports growing up, but played collegiate soccer at Appalachian State University back in the early to mid 90s, and got the full experience. Loved it. It was a lot of fun, but that's as far as my career went in college. So student athlete for 4 years. After that, went to Florida State for graduate school and got the sport management program there, and was able to do some coaching for some summer camps there, including at Florida State, and some great internships. And I wanted to pursue sports as a career, so had some connections at RDV Sports, which is the parent company of the Orlando Magic. And I worked on their ice hockey team at the time because the NBA team was in lockout. So after graduation, relationships are huge, Shane, right? Yeah. So connections that I made at that internship actually got me in the door at NASCAR, which is where I started in professional sports right out of grad school. And I had interned with Budweiser, Florida State Athletics, RDV Sports, and some of the people that moved around. So 2 or 3 people were actually at NASCAR that were from RDV Sports. That's how I at least got the interview, and worked there for a couple of years. Enjoyed it immensely. Traveled extensively, learned the business and their marketing from the people who invented the business, if you will, from motorsports side. And I went to a team in North Carolina which is where I'm still based now out of Charlotte. That was Richard Childress Racing. You may know him because they won multiple championships with Dale Earnhardt. Wow. I came after Dale Earnhardt's death to help rebuild the marketing department there. Was there for just almost 4.5, 5 years. And then I went to startup. Then I went to marketing agencies here in Charlotte, and then one in the Northeast. And that comes full circle to early 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. I don't want to beat the COVID horse too much, but things change. And the biggest thing, Shane, is out of change comes opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then with opportunity, you can change things, right? So started my own agency, which is Block Creative Agency, advertising, marketing, creative services, but digital products. And the first digital product to come full circle all the way back around to Appalachian State soccer players and that type of thing. Full circle all the way back around. That's what kind of put the ideas together of my sponsorship background, my business background, marketing, and that's where URepz came together. And URepz is going to, when it launches later this summer, completely, it's going to be the self-representation and marketing platform for student athletes, for social media influencers, and for sports clubs and organizations.
Oh man, so cool. Like a lot to unpack there too. You did say it's truly full circle.
Yes.
I want to let the young people know too, something there that you pointed out that was probably pretty subtle. And I want to make sure people actually like hear that. The connections you said you made real quick, guys, like, listen, you talked about an internship. If you guys are going to school, like you're going into college and you're doing these things, and you might be taking advantage of an opportunity. Maybe it's an internship so you can get college credit, or it's an internship just because you're just trying to get some experience, whatever, but you're not really taking it serious. I want to emphasize that point because when I went through school and got my degree at Boise State, okay, everyone has their opinions on the college education. Some don't like it. Some think it's worthless. Some think that's great. It really all depends. I will tell you one thing though, that will never match anything. When I went to college, especially my last 2 years, connections, building those relationships, because you never know what's going to happen. So if you have an internship, you listen to Brett right here. If you have an internship, take advantage of that. If it's an unpaid internship, great. If it's just for college credit, great. But like the relationships you build inside that network, you never know what with that internship, you never know what's going to happen later on. So I think that was really cool that you shared that, because it's a subtle point. I'm like, that is a super cool thing, because then all these opportunities stem from that. It's just cool how it all dominoed. And then
it's true.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's true. It's I'm still connected with some of those people that I met in Orlando, way back in 1997, and they're all doing different things now, but I'm still connected with them and can pick up a phone and chat if necessary. But it's amazing how, and you hit it so perfectly, the connections are invaluable.
100%, man, 100%. The App State reference too, just so you guys know, he went to App State. I mean, most of the guys that are around my age, about in their early 30s, we remember App State for the infamous Michigan game, which was amazing because I'm an Ohio State fan, huge Buckeye fan, go Bucks. But that was an amazing game, and so like I've always followed App State because of that. It's kind of funny how like that like something like sports can put the school on the map, and so I've always followed App State since then. So now I get to connect with somebody who's gone there. It's kind of cool.
That's right. It did put App on the map for sure, on a national level. Absolutely.
Super, super cool. So Brett, you got quite the experience as far as marketing, and now you have the athletic side to you, and you know what you're doing from a business perspective, and you found this opportunity, especially in 2020. It's interesting. I actually interviewed Walter Bond. Now, for those who haven't heard that interview, it was an interview with Walter Bond, Hall of Fame motivational speaker, but he also played in the NBA for a short stint. He was the first undrafted rookie free agent to ever start for the Mavericks on opening night when he didn't even start in college for Minnesota, and then he ended up making the NBA roster. He has a really cool story, but he actually talked to me last year about this. 2020 was a huge year for me as well, but I love what Walter said. It was very similar to what you just said, Brett. It was like, some people saw this coronavirus situation, this 2020 lockdown, it was just the worst thing that could ever happen. And others viewed it as an opportunity. And those who viewed the opportunity is like, okay, well, we can fix some things here. We can do some things. And you did exactly that. And so as we're going in there, that's why I'm so like, I think it's awesome what you've put together. And I cannot wait to share this with the rest of the listeners. URepz. We're talking about name, image, likeness right now. It's a touchy topic in collegiate sports, like there's this debate going on, like, why can't they get paid off their name? And, there was the EA Sports fiasco and all this stuff that happened a couple of years back. And then just recently we had a situation where a UCF kicker, that was a nationally known thing, had gotten his scholarship revoked because he was monetizing on YouTube off of his name, image, likeness. And to be honest, his content he was putting out, I'll be 100% real with you, Brett, I love that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that I was, as a sports fan and just somebody who's intrigued with that, I liked what he was putting out. He was trying to show people what it was like in the life of a student athlete. Mm-hmm. That's cool stuff. Other student athletes should be able to watch that and understand what's going on so they can prepare. Like, that's cool stuff. And then he gets his scholarship revoked. So you're here trying to help these kids, but I'm curious with your product. Let's talk a little bit about URepz. Mm-hmm. And first off, what is it in regards to, like, how are you going to help these kids out? Like, what is URepz so that we can dive deeper into it?
Sure. URepz is the self-representation and marketing platform. And there's one thing that I know is, being 18 to 22, 18 to 23, I had very little exposure to business, and I had very little business acumen. And the kids today growing up are so much further beyond because of their exposure to social media and how they've operated and communicated and how the world works today as it did back then. But when I came out, I didn't have that. So as things were changing and, COVID is here and we're kind of doing a self-assessment of things, it really comes down to name, image, likeness, what's happening in the landscape. The student athletes want to be able to monetize. The society as a whole doesn't really understand why it's not happening. And like I said, change develops opportunity, and opportunity you can, impact and make change. And that's what I want to do for them. I want to give them all the access, all the knowledge, the skill set, and more importantly, Shane, the ability to do that from their phone is what I want to do, to where they can market, manage, enhance, and monetize their personal brand in a guided, supported, and data-backed environment for transparency. And we can get into the nuts and bolts and why it's all structured the way it is, but it's structured so it's self-guided, self-representation to put the most dollars in their pocket. That's what it's about. It's about leveling up their business acumen and making their today better and making their tomorrow better. Because it's not something I could do for myself, but I can surely put something out there that can help them do it for themselves. So that's really it in a nutshell.
Oh, I love it, man. So for those who are listening, I'm going to put this in the description so you can look in the description right now. It's URepz, URepz.com. But I'd encourage you guys to wait until the interview's over to go check this out. But here's the deal, just so you guys can learn more about it. I am so intrigued by this. For a variety of reasons. We just talked about, like, student athletes. I believe, this is my personal opinion, they should have always been able to make money off their own name, image, and likeness, right? There's a whole debate. There's a difference between your name, image, and likeness and then getting paid by the school for being an athlete. There's a separation there. So can you maybe talk about that as well, Brett? Because people think that they're the same thing necessarily. Like, the school pays you a salary because you're representing their school and you're bringing in revenue for the football team. There's a conversation about that, but there's also name, image, likeness, which is completely separate. So do you mind maybe touching base on that, on your opinion?
Yeah, no, not at all. There's several reasons why the schools don't want to pay athletes directly. And let's just put that's the first demarcation or line in the sand, right? If they pay them directly, they become employees. And they really become minor league employees. And then it gets into amateurism and scholarship versus employment. And also, if you have employees have the right to unionize. They have the right to benefits. They have the right to a lot of things, which would totally blow up collegiate sports as we know it. So the only way to keep the model somewhat operational as the way it is and the way it functions, where you can get an education for playing a sport, right? Because not everyone's going to go pro. Right. Let's hit that on the head. Less than 2% go pro. So with that, NIL means they can make money off their own personal name, image, likeness, doing their own things by themselves, not connected with the school's intellectual property. That means it's not connected to, like, you went to Boise State, it's not connected to the orange and blue, or the mascot, or the name. It's all about you being an athlete, right? And what you can do. That is the difference. And this is a way to make both sides work. It still lets the system work, if you will, and providing opportunity, providing scholarships, and providing the American populace this wonderful thing of college sports. But it also is a way to make good for the student athletes. Now, what it really comes down to is, how are student athletes going to be able to monetize, make money? That's a nice marketing term. Monetize is make money on your rights, right? How are they going to be able to do that? And that remains to be seen, but it's contemplated right now that once the federal legislation passes and the NCAA has some sort of protections for litigation and other things, because it's a business, big business doesn't move fast. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but how are they going to make money? Well, they either agents or clearing houses or platforms like URepz, where they can do it themselves, and it's built for their success. So that's really what it's going to be.
Guys, allow me to take a second and tell you about Sportsepreneur. Now, as an entrepreneur myself and a massive sports fan, this is the perfect platform for someone like myself and a lot of you guys out there. It's a content platform where sports and entrepreneurship collide. Collaboration and content marketing for the entrepreneur with a sports passion, just like me and you. I connected with their founder a couple of years back, and I'll tell you guys, we have a massive connection through sports and entrepreneurship, and he's just an amazing guy, and their team is absolutely incredible. The team at Sportsy creates content for you and with you. Their content, which lives at sportsy.io, includes stories like the missteps of the NCAA, an in-depth article on esports, and how to bring people together, which is also one of my favorite things because I always tell you guys, sports bring people together. Now, Sportsy also features amazing guests on their podcast, including Thad Matta, AJ Vaynerchuk, and Colin Jones. So be sure to subscribe to their podcast on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And here's the thing. The team at Sportsy thinks that every entrepreneur that is willing should have their own content platform, and they want to help make that happen. So if you're an entrepreneur that's looking to start a podcast or build a website, write blog posts, or design social media posts, then you have to reach out to the team at Sportsy. They make content creation accessible. Sportsepreneur, the content platform where sports and entrepreneurship collide. Learn more at sportsy.io or connect with the founder on Twitter at Eric_Kaz. That's ERIC_KAZ. I love it. And I love that you are creating such an awesome product to help with the name, image, likeness conversation. And I love that you have the insight there. We want to keep college sports. I mean, I think as a whole, like our country understands how awesome that there's so many people that say, I don't like professional sports, I love college sports. Well, if you want to keep college sports intact and be able to, like, if you want to have your cake and eat it too, basically you got to have this as a situation here. Cause like, it's a very touchy subject. It's a very tricky subject when you start paying them straight from the school. Like you just mentioned, Brett, there's a whole conversation on that, but this right here, if you want to have your cake and eat it too, URepz is a perfect example of how you can do that, right? This is how we can do that. And in my opinion, I've seen a lot of people, like including myself, going through college. A lot of these scholarship athletes, depending on the school you go to and what type of scholarship you have and whatnot, sometimes they're not even allowed to work because that is part of the scholarship. Like you're not allowed to work because you're there to play sports, go to school, and they're paying everything. So, like for example, Cam Newton. I remember if you ever watched the documentary Broke from it was 30 for 30. He was talking about, like, he had a conversation about that afterwards. He had never written a check in his life. He'd never deposited a check in his life, and he never known because his whole life was based around sports, and then he had scholarships, and therefore he was not allowed to work. So he never actually received money. So when he got his signing bonus when he was in the NFL, he didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know how to. And so this is like, this is going to help with that. Like we need to teach these young people how to do business, simple things, and I think it's amazing. So, business skills for young athletes, just understanding not just business, but marketing and just understanding how you can monetize off your own stuff. When I was in school, I could work all day long. It didn't matter, right? And there's a lot of people that can, but all of a sudden, if you're a football player, it's a subject of like, oh, well, you're not allowed to do this because you're a football player. That's the only difference. And now things are changing, and you've provided a platform for that. So talk to us if a young athlete's coming in here and they're like, okay, this is interesting. I want to see if I can monetize off of my name, image, and likeness. And I want to go check out URepz. talk to us a little bit more about the specifics of URepz and what you guys plan to do on this platform for the kids. Like, okay, so what can I monetize? Like, what are some examples of what I could even do with my name, image, and likeness?
Right. Well, Shane, first, before they do anything, educate yourself, right? But before that, know that federal legislation has not passed. So do not do anything now that will jeopardize your opportunity later just because it hasn't happened yet. We don't have the laws aren't there. If you're in Florida or California or Colorado, some of those states, they're coming. But until there's federal legislation, just hold up and educate yourself. But what students, sorry, that's the PSA, because we don't want anyone getting themselves in trouble. Yeah, we don't want that to happen. Part of the full service package here, right? URepz is going to help them, like I said, manage, enhance, market, and monetize. What does that mean? Manages their own personal brand and how that sets up. Enhance is what they can do to improve that brand to make it more marketable. And that's where they market it. They can connect that on social media. They can do a variety of things. But you're talking about the assets, the monetization. What can they sell? They can sell their name, image, likeness. What does that mean? That means you could sell social media posts if you want. Right? Well, wow, that's kind of into the ocean. It's very doable, very scalable. You just have to know market value, that type of thing. You can sell personal appearances. You can sell autographs, autograph balls. You can actually sell your name, image, likeness for use in advertising, whether that's print advertising or digital advertising or video. You can, lend your name for endorsements. All of those things are currently contemplated. Until the law comes out, I'm a little hesitant to say, oh, you can do this. Because like merchandising, personal merchandise would be a huge, can you imagine the Cameron crazies putting your face on a t-shirt and having 300 of them in there because they hate you? Well, you would love that because you're getting paid on it. But we don't know that's going to happen just yet. It actually shakes out of all these laws. But social media posts, personal endorsements, you can even do skills camps and that type of thing. Appearances, and you're a marketable asset. So anywhere that you see another athlete in an advertisement, if you will, or a relationship with a company, that's exactly what you can do.
I'm really intrigued by this this whole thing because, for one, social media posts, I think the younger generation is starting to understand the impact and the reach that social media has. But like, literally, for those who want like a literal statement here, the way that would work is essentially you could get paid to make a post on your platform like that and other things, right? But you leverage your name off of it. Just like today, like, people think it's crazy. Like, I tell my cousins this all the time that are in high school graduating right now. I'm like, you can literally charge $50 if you have a large enough platform and a big enough brand and people see the value in your brand. You can charge $50 to make a post or more. Like, hey, I charge $200 and to put your name on my platform. It's like, wait, people would pay for that? Yes, people would pay for that. I would pay for that. Like, as a podcaster, as a content creator, if I see somebody that I feel they have the right type of audience, I want to support them, one, and two, I think that they could provide value with their audience seeing my stuff. Yeah, I would pay for that. So, like, just so you guys know that these things sound a little far-fetched. No, they're not. Like, people pay for this stuff, and Brett's helping you with that, like understanding the types of ways that you can monetize.
Absolutely right. And what you have to think of yourself is, do you have a following? Right. And if you do, and most student athletes of certain sports or certain genders, it just depends on where they are and what they do and how they go about operating, have followings. If you have a following, you can monetize that following based on the number. Say you have less than 5,000. You're just like, well, I don't have but 3,000 followers. Is that worth anything? Yes, that's actually called a nano influencer, and people pay money. They pay real money to have you because you have a very specific and targeted audience, which helps them move the needle for their business.
I love it.
Nano influencer, micro influencers, less than 25,000, and then it moves on up. So for every level, there's an opportunity, right? Whether you're a big fish in a big pond or a medium-sized fish in a small pond, there's going to be opportunities at scale for you to figure out. Now, one thing, another PSA, and we want to talk about this, just because you can make money doesn't mean you necessarily will, right? That's the one thing that nobody is really talking about at length. They're kind of sloughing it off and mentioning it, I mean, and we're talking 99% here. We're not talking the 1%,
Right.
the 1.5%. The 1.5% are the household name athletes. They are going to make their money. In fact, they're going to make the lion's share of money nationally, just as they would when they go pro. But what does that mean for everybody else? Well, everyone else has scalable opportunity. And if a cheerleader who isn't an NCAA athlete, so he or she are not regulated by the NCAA, they can go ahead and monetize their audience for whatever they want. So why can't a soccer player or a football player or a tennis player? Well, now they're going to happen, but there's scalable opportunity for them. Just because you're the most popular player doesn't mean you will be the most marketable asset, if that makes sense.
I love that. Let's talk about that a little bit too.
Sure.
Like, for example, I go back in the Boise State era. Like we go about, let's rewind about a decade ago, a little more. Kellen Moore, arguably one of the best quarterbacks to ever go through college football. I mean, I went to all of his games. I mean, seriously, the guy was phenomenal. He didn't pan out as much in the NFL, but that's not just because of his skill set. I think a lot of that has to do with opportunity. So that's a debatable thing. But anyways, during that time, Kellen Moore, if we were to be like, okay, let's imagine we're in a world back then where things were being monetized and you were able to capitalize off of your name, image, and likeness. Obviously, like what you're saying here, Brett, it sounds like Kellen Moore, like the top dog, he'll probably take, he could probably take a lot of the money there because it's Kellen Moore. But what are the opportunities? What are the scalable opportunities? Let's say for an offensive lineman that's blocking for Kellen Moore. He's an offensive lineman, right? And not even maybe the top tier offensive lineman, but he's an offensive lineman who's maybe a guard or a tackle that's blocking for him. You mentioned a couple things, social media posts. You mentioned camps potentially. Talk to me about that. What are you seeing as a former athlete and somebody who's been in marketing for a while and deep into this business now with the research that you're doing? What are some of these opportunities you see these other athletes that are not, quote unquote, the 1%ers, like the top dogs on their programs?
Sure. The 95%, the rest of the talent pool is going to have to do a little more work, and it's going to be real work. This isn't just free money falling from the sky, right? That's not how that's going to operate. Let's be very realistic about this, because if you are getting paid for something, it is work. And there is a relationship that's expected for that. So, but how can an offensive lineman or even the kicker, even though the kicker at UCF is atypical, but very real. He's a great example. The offensive lineman has two markets, right? He has the local market where the school is, and he has his market where he comes from. He is well in home, just as he's maybe well known or known in his school market. So that's two separate things that he needs to identify and look at. But before he does that, or while he's doing that, he needs to study his own brand, his personal brand, and figure out who he is, and what he's not. And then communicate those clearly, right? And if the offensive lineman is into duck hunting and he's from, somewhere in Iowa and he's at a different school, well, you know what? He may not sell a lot or do well in his school market, but it doesn't mean he can't maximize his home market because his brand is distilled. He likes hunting, so he does things at Walmart in the parking lot of all places, because that's where they want to do a skills competition, and he does football and duck hunting and blah, blah, blah. He shows up at the fish camp because that's where they're doing things to have other athletes come out of different alternative sports. He can do that in the summer. He can even lend his likeness, because everything is at scale. And what I mean by that is where he's from, he may be one of the most known athletes in that town in recent memory, even though where he goes to school, he may not be the big fish. So you really have to think about the locations. You have to think about your brand, and then what's going to match up well with that.
Ooh, that is super insightful. And I want everyone to listen to that. just because you're not the quote unquote top dog in the program, like the most well known, does not mean you can't capitalize on some other things. And I love that you talked about the two separate, like you got your school, that area, and then where you come from. And sometimes for some people that's around the same area, but maybe it's your high school area. Like, what are some of the local places around your high school? Could you go back to your high school and do a camp? Could you go around your high school? And I don't know. It's just little things like that. The sky's the limit. As an entrepreneur, this is going to help these athletes think a little bit outside the box. Just like get your mind blowing. I guess growing, so to speak, on the opportunities that you just mentioned. Like, if you're into duck hunting, yes, you just so everybody knows, you can pretty much sell anything. I just want everybody to understand that. I work in entrepreneurship. I work with a lot of in my full-time job. I work with entrepreneurs. You could literally sell a pair of socks if you do it properly. Like if you were to put together some seminar or webinar or whatever, you could do whatever you want to do. If you're into something, your hobby, whatever it may be, karate, whatever, you could capitalize on that if you do it properly. And what ways would URepz help? Let's say for the example of this offensive lineman, the duck hunter, how could URepz help this guy out as far as like getting the exposure and marketing him or herself to that market, so to speak?
Sure. Well, URepz is going to have a couple different things built into it. It's going to have a video library and also a document library, and it's URepz U, the university, if you will. But URepz U, and it's going to help for communications, how to communicate with people in business, how to communicate your brand, right? It's going to talk about brand building for your own personal brand, how to distill that, how to layer messaging, but really distill your brand so it's clearly easy and clear to communicate, and then how to market it and ways of going about taking your brand, taking your messaging, and then feeding that in to your available feeds. Some athletes already have podcasts. Some athletes have blogs. Some athletes just post. But to your point, and I love the example earlier you brought up on the UCF kicker, he was the kicker. And yet he was the most marketable player on that team. So with that in mind, you have to think about that. And that's the same comment I made earlier. Just because you're not the most known or the most important or the MVP, you're not the best player on the team, does not mean you don't have the best business opportunity. So URepz is going to have a library, video, and content to where you can help work on your business skills, communications, branding, marketing, and how you go to market. We're also going to advertise our program and our platform heavily via channels, heavily via traditional business media, so people know they can reach athletes and they can reach talent, social media talent. They can even reach clubs via URepz. Beyond that, we've got a marketplace hub that is going to have partners in it that will help student athletes level up their game today, but really after the game, right? Financial services, bankings, loans, automotive, legal services if you need it. It's a full gamut of what you need to prepare yourself for the next phase of your life.
Oh, I love this, man. I'm telling you, like, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Your time, I was going to say your time, you got 4 years of eligibility for those athletes who are going to be able to take advantage for all 4 years. Some people, maybe one. So your time's limited. So what you do now can actually prepare you for the rest of your life and set you up with good habits, good disciplines, and good opportunities.
Guys, I know there's a lot of you out there who listen to my podcast and you've told me, I want to start my own podcast, or I need to build a website or write some blogs or design a social media post. You know what? Go over to Sportsypreneur. The team at Sportsy can make that happen for you. Remember, Sportsypreneur is the content platform where sports and entrepreneurship collide. So make sure to go to sportsy.io. They'll take care of you, or connect with their founder at Eric_Kaz on Twitter. That's ERIC_KAZ. Man, I'm like thinking back in my own time of being in college and how much of an amazing opportunity this is. Your suggestion, I want to get your insight here then, Brett, with what you're building. How old do you need to be looking into this? Like, is there a minimum age where you can sign up for an account for it? And what suggestion would you give to the younger athletes that are like, okay, well, I'm not quite to the college level yet, but I want to use this when I get there? What should they be doing to build themselves up in the meantime?
Sure, sure. URepz, of course, you have to be a legal adult, 18 years old, to sign up for the platform yourself in order to operate as a business entity, as your own business entity. If you're under the age of 18, which a lot of our potential users are, you can sign up with a parent or guardian, and then they operate the system with you on your behalf. And we have different documentation and user agreements for those. But that's how you, I'm going to say get around it, but that's how you work on it together until you are a legal adult. Now, the second part of the question was, what can they do? What can athletes do now to help build their presence or to think longer term? And they can be active on social media. They can be active in their community, but they can really think about who they are, what their interests are, and start speaking to those interests and doing those things beyond just the sport. Like, hey, say you're in motorsports and you like driving at the local track. You may not be the next Jeff Gordon or Jimmy Johnson, but you can do very, very well competing Fridays and Saturday nights at a local track. But you have to start by understanding your brand, understanding who you are, what your product is, and what interests you have, and then communicating those clearly. And if you can start communicating that clearly, you can start building a relationship with people. That's what it is online. You're building relationships. And even though it's followers, you're building a relationship, a rapport. Start building that now and start preparing yourself for the longer game. And the reason I'm not hesitant, but the reason I say, hey, we don't have it available yet on the college level, carte blanche. It's not everywhere yet. It's not a federal legislation, federal law. So we don't know how it will push down into high school sports yet. But we know it will come, because the same argument holds true high school sports as it does college. Just because I play a sport doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to not do this. Because if I'm a cheerleader or I'm just a creator or a musician, not to marginalize creators because they're great and they can use the URepz platform too. We love it. But, because I don't play a sport, I can't do this. Well, that doesn't really make any sense if you start thinking about that.
Right.
When some of the top internet influencers are dancers, cheerleaders, singers. Wow. I mean, the upside is there. The potential is there.
100%, man. This is something I geek out about. I want to touch base on a couple of those things. Just make sure to highlight them. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. For young athletes, build your following and connect. And what you mentioned as well, Brett, is get involved with your local community. Now, how do you do that, guys? Like for the kids that I coach for basketball, for example, I look at these, they're sophomore, juniors in high school, and who knows what the college world will be for athletics. It's a couple years out. So they're still working towards that potentially. But in the meantime, be active. If social media is not your thing, okay. I mean, that's okay. I don't think that's necessarily going to be like the worst thing in the world. I mean, it might help if you are active on social media, but if you're not, cool, because you might not like social media, but you can still do things like being active in your community. What would be a suggestion for you, like that you would say, like, hey, as yourself, Brett, being in this industry, that a local kid could do in their community at this age that could potentially help them build those relationships, if you will?
Sure. First it's their interests. And at 14, 15, 16, I was still developing new interests and things were new. So first it's get out and try a few things and experiment with what you do like and what you don't like. But also what's natural to you? What is, the word authenticity or authentic is sometimes overused, but it's who you are and what comes through. So what you're naturally good at or what you're drawn to, what means something to you may not mean something to your neighbor, But guess what? There's other people out there where it does. So just get out there and get to know some people, get to know your interests, get to know yourself. And if you can identify those items, yourself, your brand, interests, building relationships, you have the opportunity to be successful.
Man, I love this conversation, and I want people to think like deeper into this a little bit. Like, for example, I'm an animal lover, right? And I want to share this
Hmm.
with some people because I know there's some guys I've coached and just younger kids that they're similar to me. Like they're the big bad athlete and whatever, but they're animal lovers, right? Here's something you could do. Like for real, this is something that I did when I was younger. Go volunteer at an animal shelter. Like go help out, go walk the dogs. There's sometimes they like, for example, here in Idaho, they have like the animal shelter and they want people to go walk the dogs. Like they have
Right,
so many
right,
dogs in there. They want someone to go walk the dogs. So you can go do that for an hour or something. It's really cool. Like, and by doing that, you not
right.
only, you get to do what you love, but you get to build a relationship with the people who work there for one. And they remember
Hmm.
that. They'll remember people like that if you're really passionate about that. And then who knows, maybe one day down the road, had I been like a top tier athlete or something, not even top tier, like if I just gone to college sports or something and this was available to me, maybe I use something like URepz where I have that connection with them. Maybe I reach back out to that company, the animal shelter, and see if there's anything I can do for them to work together with them. I don't know. Just like that's something that I was just thinking that's outside the box, has nothing to do with sports, but just working at
Right,
the animal
right.
shelter. Like,
No, you're absolutely right. And the other thing that I want to talk about, if you are a student athlete or you're an influencer or whatever your jam is, right? If you like social media and you connect well with it, but hey, I don't know, I don't understand content, right? Document, document what you do, document whatever your interests are. If you're at the animal shelter, guess what? People would love to know that. They would love to see your TikToks about you walking dogs and the silly music and that type of thing and what you do behind the scenes, right? They would love to see your workouts and the work ethic and the things that you put in that people don't always see. You mentioned earlier, we're going to keep coming back to the kicker, and I've got to find his name because he was great. Uh, you mentioned it. He gave people a behind the scenes view. Well, that's really what documenting is about. And this isn't just me talking. Gary Vaynerchuk has built an empire starting with documenting content. That's where you start out at, is you tell your story. How do you tell your story? You record your story and you just start sharing it, and then it builds. So
and I can
document.
speak to that. I can speak to the documentation piece just so everybody's listening. Like it's a super important piece of your journey. Gary Vaynerchuk's obviously one of the bigger names. He wrote a book
Hmm.
called Crushing It. It's an amazing book. If you guys haven't read that, go check that out. But he's just huge about documenting, like even if it's a podcast, if it's a blog, if it's an Instagram story, it's a TikTok video, document it, because those are and do so. I would recommend in the right way, right? You're trying to build
Hmm.
yourself, your brand, but also you start to learn yourself. Like you learn about who you are as a person, and while others are learning about yourself as well. It's just really cool to go back and see the stories, and then all of a sudden you've got content that you can repurpose later. But I'm huge about documentation as well. I'm a huge Gary Vaynerchuk fan myself.
Hmm.
And I can't stress that enough to the kids. Like if you're going to be posting on social media, which a lot of them are already doing anyways, leverage that skill set, which you might think is pointless. It's not. Like leverage that skill set till later and keep building off that. And you'd be surprised who would like to watch that content. Like there's a lot of people that want to see stuff that you wouldn't think. So going to URepz real quick as
Yeah,
we're starting to wrap up the interview. I do have a few
sure.
questions though in regards to like the plan for, like, is it a subscription? Is how long is the contractual agreement with URepz when an athlete decides to start? Because my question came up. I'm thinking if I'm an athlete myself or somebody who wants to utilize a platform, so it doesn't have to necessarily be an athlete, but like just anybody who wants to utilize
Hmm.
a platform. And let's say I go through 4 years of college and I utilize the platform, but let's say at the end of that 4 years, I might want to, I'm going on with bigger and better things, but I still want to leverage the things that I did. If we had websites built or landing pages that were connected to
Hmm.
URepz, do I get to transfer that over? Like, what's the thoughts on that? What's the contractual agreement? What's the subscription look like for them, for a user that wants to use it?
Sure. Again, it's how building Europe's for helping people in a way that I wish I could help or I couldn't help myself. So the platform, the basic platform and the services, which is a full suite of services, again, to market, manage, enhance, market, and monetize, right? That's free to users to use. Fees are structured for transactions, which are applied back to those. And there's a variety of other things that I don't want to give away all the how we're going to do it, but it's at zero cost, cash out of pocket to the user for you to use the self-representation platform. If you want the VIP level services where a service representative from URepz actually manages some things for you, then we've got an arrangement where it's still no cash out of pocket. It's just a different percentage of transaction. So if you want to, say you're an athlete and you become alumni, well, technically you're still an influencer in our book. You're still active. Whether you're a former athlete or just, a creator, maker, artist, doesn't matter. You can still use the platform. And as long as you're engaged and active, everything stays with and stays up and running. Now, if you wanted to take content that you created, because you're not necessarily creating it with URepz, images or things you've done, it can go with you, that type of thing. If you're building something off of URepz templates and that type of thing, then it would need to be through URepz still, but it doesn't mean you couldn't take it and use it elsewhere, put it on your website if you transitioned. But and as you know, with Game Time Guru and other things, we structured it URepz, so your personal URL, right? Your URepz.com/Shane Larson or whatever, whomever, Brett Harrell. You can take that URL and embed it into your website under a different, you can tag the layers and it just populates to your page. So we're structuring the website in a way to where that's easy to do, and you can do it off any link. People do it now, it's like, but it's going to give you your own online presence just by having a profile. So,
man, this is super sweet, dude. Like, I'm telling you guys, if you're take advantage of this opportunity. That's all I'm going to tell you. Like, take advantage of this opportunity. Like, this is something Brett said it himself. Like, this is something that he wishes he would have had. I wish I would have had this opportunity, like these resources available to me. Brett found an opportunity here to help out people. There's a gap that needed to be filled, and he's filling that with URepz. If someone's listening to this right now, Brett, how do they sign up for a URepz account?
Right now, we're taking pre-registrations, so it's no commitment, and like I said, there's no cost for talent users. Go to URepz.com, and you spelled it earlier, but it is you, which works for yourself, reps, and you get it URepz.com, and click on the pre-register button and just walk through the pre-filled templates, and it identifies you if you're an athlete, if you are an influencer, or even if you're an interested business that wants to conduct business with our talent pool, then please let it be known, because the talent, the athletes, the creators, the influencers, they want to know,
Totally, man. And if anyone has questions on it, Brett, like, is there any contact information or a place where we can find the contact information so that they can ask those questions?
Absolutely. It's on the website. There is a FAQ page. You can also hit us up on Instagram or LinkedIn, Facebook. It's all under URepz. So
awesome. We'll link it all to there so they know. The FAQs page on the website, but then the Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook pages will also link here in the description, so people can click there and get there really quickly. Is there any last words, Brett, that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up the interview, man? This has been super, super insightful and exciting, man.
I just appreciate the opportunity, and like I said, this is the opportunity that I wish I had. So if I can somehow pay it forward and give someone else a leg up, then that's what we're going to do.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. For all those out there listening, take advantage. Like I said before, take advantage of this opportunity. Go check this stuff out. It's in the description. Now that the interview's over, I give you permission to go to another site so you don't get distracted. Now you can go and focus all on that. And yeah, you guys know the drill. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Leave me a review. Let us know what you think, and share it with your friends and family. I know a lot of you guys out there are athletes yourselves. Share it with your friends who are athletes. Share it around. Let the word get out. This is how we scale things. We want people to get the word out. So this is what we're doing here. Make sure you're subscribed so you can listen to the interviews. We'll be coming to you next week with another one. And Brett, one more time, thank you so much for joining the Game Time Guru podcast.
Thank you, Shane. We'll talk soon.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.